content creator, because what has happened with the more digital age, with just a cell phone, you literally can become one. But we also have a flood of, welcome to my channel, subscribe.
You must also admit that those welcome to my channel, subscribe, they have people watching them for some reason or the other. So I don't know if it's because we want simple things, but in terms of just saying, look, the type of show you want to do, first you have to be very clear. What do you want to do? Who do you want to talk to? Why do you want them to have this information? What's your end game? Those questions will happen as any other thing would as you're planning it. And then in terms of now assigning how you want the people to receive this information, you've chosen that this is a platform you want, it's digital, fine, but are you going to be talking about things in your house without a plan? You must have a plan. That's one of the things that I found even as I was selecting my team, and I was like, there are things that I learned being on traditional media, the grounding rules, the who, what, when, why.
And that still remains.
It is a story. It doesn't matter where you're writing it. It is a story. Because how do you capture people? What's your attention? What's your end story? You must know your end before you start. You start. So you start with your end, build up your story. Those rules will still be the same. Only that the delivery and the platform has changed. I don't think anything else changes. What I do believe is that you're now just making it maybe more accessible to people and saying that you can come back and you can have instant feedback because we can converse immediately and read your messages and get back to you. I can have instant data, especially for my advertisers, which is something that with traditional media, you have to wait for that guy who does the research who you don't know, and then he comes back and says it was like this, and you're like, where did you go to do this research? You know what I mean? Where did you? So for me, it was a question of, I want to be able to give people research, my advertisers, I want to give them instant research. I want them to know that this show aired, these are the people who are watching at this time, the engagement, and this is exactly the feedback, blah, blah, blah. So as we put your brand here, these are the people you'll be talking to. They come from here, this is the age. That's the beauty of what the digital platform has done for us, is that they've broken it down.
They've broken it down.
Yeah, I agree with that, by the way. There is a way in which you can quickly measure the impact of social media. Don't get me wrong. I say traditional media is still around for a while, but it's also opening up to these bigger possibilities, all right, that are here with us. But what Kalecha says, the kind of questions that you ask, she's right. In addition to that, I think it's also important because as the issues emerge, it's good that you interact with those issues, okay, when you're creating content. So that involves obviously reading extensively,
exactly.
Developing yourself, okay, talking to people who understand how the brain of the newsroom functions, for example, like Koki here, all right? And you just package yourself. You can do it remotely somewhere on a platform like YouTube and create your own content, all right?
Koki, maybe some of those rules and looking again at the business models, she's talked about advertisers. One of the things that has kept us where we are, and sometimes I would say as traditional or legacy media stifles us, is the business model, in the sense that we wait for advertisers who are going to maybe get 2 pages on the newspaper or at prime time. But again, how do we engage with the people when we are depending on the advertiser? Are we able to deliver what the people want? Because with Kaleche's platform, she's able to segment and say, I am speaking to the youth, I'm speaking to ladies, I'm speaking to whoever, that demographic, very easily, and advertisers can easily now pick on that and say, we want to speak to them. Is traditional media stuck to an advertiser and business model that forces us to churn out stuff that maybe people out there are not consuming?
No, I think those are decisions media houses make, because you have BBC with lifestyle, entertainment, you have various channels, and therefore you can focus your energy on hard or soft news, features, whatever you want. It's a decision that you make, and of course, depending on who you appeal to, then the advertisers would follow. But if the media house is really focused, I think your main thing is just news and not the other, genres that you would use to generate income for yourselves generally, then you'd find that you would struggle a lot to appease the advertiser and in that way kind of constrain the content that you create. And in terms of business model, I think given that media has thrived on advertising for years, of course we see that advertisement has taken a different route It's not necessarily just on your platform. You see, we don't only just depend on mainstream media to know about stuff. So therefore, if there is the online platform, they can put in their clips. It's cheaper, it's easier, it captures my attention. I pay, like sometimes when I go to Facebook, I have all these adverts of things that I didn't know. They are kind of inscripted into my my feed, and therefore I can see what I need to see there.
Right.
And if it comes to television, that it's just maybe a by the way. So bottom line is for the media to calibrate its services. Yes, we know news is key, it sells, but then some of us are looking for features. That's why we have Netflix, we have Showmax. Some of us are looking
Varieties
for documentaries.
Yeah.
Some of us are looking, look at the clamor when you say you have an investigative piece. Look at how people clamor to see that. So you need to really think about, how can we diversify, our storytelling to the extent that we still capture the niche audience needs.
That is out there.
Yes.
All right,
Still
Kalechi,
maintain
we definitely with a cell phone you can do something,
Right.
but quality also, I mean, we're in a very demanding society right now.
Yes.
If you put out something out there that is either the sound is not good or the picture quality is not good, at what point does one transition from just using your cell phone on your own in your room and do that live podcast to where now you have lights, a nice studio, a nice set, because those things do matter.
They do matter. They do matter. I think, again, it comes back to what kind of content do you want to deliver and the length of it. Because you see, the freedom now is I can give you a 5-minuter, which I can use on my phone.
Right.
And there are phones which can record in 4K, which is
pretty good quality.
Good quality. But then again, when I know, for example, for my production, for Live and Uncut, we are actually able to live stream from a 3-camera shoot. We have lights and we have sound on set. We have microphones, everything. Because I know the kind of quality I want to deliver is a good package show that tomorrow I can come to KTN and say, buy my show. I don't have to go rework anything. I've already done it, I've packaged it, it's set. Because that's the way I'm thinking. Like I said, we do need each other at some point because, as Koki has mentioned, people are looking for very diverse things on the kind of content they want to consume. And yes, the hard news is something that we love, and especially as Kenyans, we live on news. But then again, we do want these other soft things. We want to learn, we want more information, we want to just hear stories. And that's, for me, the reason I'm doing Live and Uncut for now is because I want people to tell their stories, and those stories will help change perceptions. Like, I have people who perceive that Kalechi is a very rich girl, she has no problems, she has not, I mean, come on.
That's a good thing.
Well, because then what happens? KTN will think they want to buy my show, then they say, hey, she'll be too expensive, we won't call her. And I mean, I'm like, no, anything is possible. When you're in business and you're an entrepreneur, let's talk. Let's talk, you know what I mean?
Exactly.
But I want to change perceptions. I want people to understand that by the time Mike got where he is, there are things you went through that your audience now has no clue. Right? And they think you woke up like this.
Right.
I mean, okay, yeah, you could have woken up like this. But I'm just saying.
I wish.
But I'm just saying.
And by the way, you're a very good storyteller, so yeah.
Yeah, so what I mean is, like, I'd like to know how you grew up. I'd like to know
what's your background?
What was your background? What was your relationship with your parents about your decisions? For example, and I know my parents are watching now, they were very anti this thing of you're going to do at their communications degree.
What is that?
What is that?
Yeah.
You see, so by the time I got where I am now, that they're super proud of me, I went through some other loops that, I mean, really, that's
Nobody
a story
knows.
to tell. You see, nobody knows. So I want people to hear those stories so that they realize, because we have a millennial generation that thinks, I wake up and I just become. But they need to understand that you should go through this whole process.
That
if you
whole
ask Tom
process.
how he got where he is now, hey, I'm sure it's quite
There's a whole story.
So I want to invite you to
and
my
it's
show.
also a good story. In fact, I remember a
he
story
is.
that he once did, was it in India?
Yeah.
Which still, I can almost remember the pictures. And that, I think, describes the fact that a story remains a story. And regardless of whether it's the digital platform, whether it's legacy media, the story still needs to be told the same.
Yeah.
Are there areas, Tom, that you'd see and maybe recommend that people still need to ensure that they keep that, whether it's edutainment, whether it's entertainment, whatever, the story still needs to be told in a very constructive and good way?
Exactly, yeah. And Koki brought it out that the science of telling stories will always remain the same. Okay, If you ask a viewer what was the third story last week on a Thursday, they've probably forgotten. But the same viewer will take you back to 2010 when I did that story of the African tribe in India.
Exactly.
So I think it's just a question of understanding the behavior of the viewer.
Yes.
These people never get enough of good stories that are told well, especially the African stories, because these were Africans somewhere in some forest in India, you know, and they connected with that story. Okay.
And to this day, because of the visuals and all that, we all connected with it. I mean, I remember it. You want to say something?
Yeah, it just goes back to the idea of who are journalists outside the media house. I think you also need to ask those questions, because she's talking about entrepreneurship. And I remember some time back in Nakuru, is it like 5-6 years ago, we were having what we call top story competition by, he's in KTN now, Joseph, I don't remember his name, but he was kind of having a competition for university students, and we were having some training, and I remember Alan Namu and Chamwada were telling us about, you know, their disillusionment with mainstream media and all that. And then they were telling us what they envisioned themselves to be. And the next time I met them, they were all media owners. So I think that's just another thing that maybe journalism should look into in terms of even training. How do we turn this beautiful skill of ours that is unique and that is important into a business? I mean, how do we monetize it so that it becomes meaningful for you beyond the media house? Because it's like, you know, you can do things over the years, but then again, there comes a time you outgrow. Let me use there comes a time.
You might outgrow the music.
Yes.
And like maybe Kalechi outgrew a radio station.
Yeah.
And therefore you need to find a place to just be you and do what you need to do. That's how
and
life
also,
is.
I think also owning the content.
Yeah.
I think it matters that you are able to design this content, bring it to birth, and, you know, deliver it, but then own it.
Yes.
I think for me that was also a very, very big priority, that I want to be able to own my content, because I gave 10 years to a radio station. I created content, but it's not mine.
It is not yours. It belonged to them. Now you have the chance to
now
do
I have
that.
Exactly.
And Tom, maybe just to also have the definition, because we also have a blurred line in some people's view of what a journalist is and a content creator who's not a journalist. Sometimes there's that confusion. Maybe just to draw that line, because a journalist still remains a journalist. The principles remain the same. There are certain ethics that should remain the same. But a content creator may be able to bend a few rules here and there.
Exactly, yeah. The other day I was listening to a radio station, and they're actually doing the news in Sheng. Okay? So, Mike, you and I, as we are growing older, the audiences are becoming younger. And if you look at that demographic, it's expanding. And in the future, they're telling us today that Sheng will be away. All right? I may struggle with that because my background, you know, I'm coming from strong mainstream. All right? But today, issues are emerging, languages are being created, content is being created. The issues that the youth are confronted with today are probably
Totally different.
Different from, and Kalechi is right.
Yeah.
That you can bolt out of mainstream and go and place content on these media platforms that are available and still have impact. All right? Okay? You know that traditional media is a bigger machine.
Yeah.
All right? But when you set up your outfit like she did, then you have control.
But would you say that there's actually a distinct difference between a journalist and just somebody who's creating content and does not have to be bound by the rules and regulations of journalism?
I
think so.
Yeah,
Can I say?
Yeah, go on.
I am not a journalist. Okay, people confuse the fact that when you work in a certain media house, you're a journalist.
Correct.
I did not study journalism. I studied international relations. However, in international relations, at USIU, because I'm an alumni of USIU, yes, thank you very much. I have to put the plug. My people
Pull
are
up
there.
my collar.
You know what I mean? But in terms of the way I learned international relations, I mean, you learned how to debate, you learned how to research. There's certain things that you learned within that degree that I could apply as I went into the world of radio to use my God-given talent, to expound. But of course I had to listen to other people who were doing these things that I wanted to do. But they were entertainers. So I am a content creator. I would call myself more of an entertainer, but I'm not a journalist because I've not studied the journalism. I may have learned these things along the way. But does that make me less of a person in terms of being able to create the content? I think my experience has helped me to be able to do what I am doing now.
I think okay, now from a more theoretical perspective, the blogger exists, or somebody who is not trained as a journalist already does not qualify for legal protections, the reporter's privilege. They do not qualify for representation of a media house. They don't qualify to be called journalists because they're not employed in a media house. They don't have privilege to hide their sources. That's why they you find them in and out of of courts. And generally the skill of gatekeeping, the nature of gatekeeping, the editor part of it becomes an issue, because what happens online, you become a prosumer. You're a producer and a consumer.
Correct.
And then the other thing that happens with these two different entities is that media is guided by media logic. Media logic is the gathering process of news, the processing it and the delivery. But online, it's more about public logic. I mean, do you resonate with me? Does what you say resonate with me? Does the platform gives me audience? I mean wide variety, users and gratification, and therefore I can pick what I want and basically have something to do with it. But with those who are content creators and don't have journalistic training, they're likely to face a lot of challenges in terms of, legal challenges with what they're doing.
But there's also the consumer, because there are also consumers who confuse blogger, for example, as a journalist, whereas they're not really what they put out there. And I guess that's why they still come back to traditional media to find out, is this true?
Like we've said, really, it's like this Boris Johnson. Is he called Boris Johnson? Very attractive, very prominent, very enticing. But at the end of the day, people begin to read the blog and begin to see there's something not right here.
There's something that's not adding up.
Severally, you try to read something from this person and you cannot, it's always disputed or it's not verifiable, then, it becomes a challenge. And most bloggers I know have journalists working for them today. So why?
At least to verify. So journalism still remains, a profession that will be protected. Tom, as we wind up, where do you see media, specifically traditional or legacy media, in another 5-10 years, because things are changing so fast? It can only be a good thing that we have the digital platform, but that is disruption. It has disrupted the newsroom and we have to change.
Yeah, certainly, yes. I think when I look back 5 years, obviously the disruptions are here with us. And in the next 5 years, mainstream is going to be focused more on the magazine kind of journalism, where you pick a theme or a title or an issue that society is faced with, and you blow it out and give it a bigger brush, and have a conversation around it, so that we're going to see a lot more issues around. For example, right now, there's we are seeing young people struggling with issues of mental health.
That's a big thing.
So are you going to report? We know it's there, but how is media going to tackle it? Are you going to pick those topics and give it a bigger brush and allow a conversation around it?
Is there space, do you think, on the digital platform, for instance, the investigative pieces that you're talking about, that has still been left to traditional media by virtue of the fact, maybe because of training, protection, resources. But is there a time that's coming where we'll have that now owned by what we'd call content creators, and maybe they're just going to investigative journalism or areas like those?
Oh, yes, certainly. And we're starting to see people putting together stories Okay, stories that mainstream has shied away from because of what Koki referred to. Sometimes when you have big acreage of advertising space being paid for by specific institutions, it's very difficult to go in and really cut through a story objectively. And that is being done now by people who are outside.
Yeah.
So
Well,
obviously,
I don't think it will be content creators. It will be journalists who are not working in media. Because the techniques, you know, there are techniques that remain.
Yeah.
There are certain things that need to go into having an investigative piece, maybe explaining why, for example, when Alan's show was not on KTN, it exploded online. But I'm telling you, the process of getting the story where it remains the same.
The role,
and I think that's the main thing to understand is even as you want to be a content creator, you must go and do your research well. You may not go to school to do it, but now that you have all this information online, you just need to click and learn, and you will study it before you do it. I'd advise anybody who wants to create content for digital platform to also think, if I want this thing to succeed, I must find out how to create good quality content following guidelines, because it doesn't change. It doesn't change just because you're doing it on digital. You must follow certain rules to be able to get the traction that you are now looking to get your advertisers into. So that rule, I agree with both Tom and Koki. Yes, you must still find out and follow those rules.
Okay, we'll need to wind up. I'm told we're out of time, so maybe I'll start with you, Koki, on your closing comments, and maybe generally just advice to traditional media specifically, because if we don't shape up, we'll definitely be shipped out.
No.
If we also aren't ready.
I don't think that's the
No, there has to be a balance. It is a possibility.
Not really. It's just the ability to adopt what is disrupting your industry. And adoption, the solution to that adoption is the fact that you need to vary your content. And just know that some people will look for hard news, some people look for features, some people look for talk shows, and more investment should go into production. I don't think journalism as it is.
So it's here to stay.
It's here to
It
stay.
depends. All right, Kalechi, do you think that if we don't shape up, we might just...
Well, I think you need to shape up. That is for sure. Because let's face it, the consumption is what you need to look at. What do these audiences want? And most of them are enjoying things like, how do you think Jugosh came to be, for example? I mean, right now, the level at which he's able to convert for advertisers at such a high rate with just being funny, and it's a short, very short kind of clip, but then it will get all this traction, and he's able to translate. Now, the question to the people doing traditional media is the media owners, is, are you able to produce? If you're not, come to us. Let us produce for you. Let us get this stuff that people want onto these platforms. We do need each other. I'll still hold on to that. We do need each other.
Tom, your closing comments and thoughts?
Yeah, I think two things. Just ensure that those platforms are available, have your videos on demand so your consumers can get them, and just open up a feedback mechanism and just let them be part of your news production process.
All right, thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. That's Tom Boyer, a veteran journalist, Kalechi Mumo, who is CEO and founder of KM Network, also a content creator, and Koki. Thank you very much for joining us this morning. Who's a lecturer at the USIU. That's the newsroom, and that's where we wind up for now. But do stay with us right here on KTN News. We continue with Morning Express after the break, where we have your health. Do stay with us.